Hallo, bin Marcel Davis, Leiter für Kundenzufriedenheit bei 1&1.
A few weeks ago, we decided to enroll into the glorious Pizza Doggies Horror Jam. I guess the jam is not that important because we wanted to make a horror game anyway, but nonetheless, the jam forced us to actually do it. Which is indeed quite an important part in game development or any creative project, to be honest. In the beginning, we sat down and discussed the most important part of the game, the mechanic. Unlike movies or books, games define themselves through their mechanic. There are exceptions, of course, but they are exceptions and not the rule. So hear me out. Name one game you like. I'll do it with you. Portal 2. Why do you like it? The lore. I see. But why do you play it? Because it is entertaining, of course. But could I live through the game without the portal gun? Probably not. And not just because I wouldn't progress. Could I live through a portal book or movie without the portal gun? Absolutely. That is because I judge movies and books by different standards than games. Thus, we have to construct our game around the mechanic and nothing else. This is really important because you can swap out every other bit of the game and make it a different experience, but change the mechanic and you change the game. And so we decided on our mechanic to be chores. Yeah, come on. I know how interesting that sounds for a game. A horror game at that. But you see,
the inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Hallo, bin Marcel Davis.
It just so happened that I actually had to do chores during our brainstorming session. I had to put the lawnmower back into the shed, but it was already dark. So during my epic quest, I had the thought that every game dev has eventually. Wait, I can make a game out of this. We agreed on this theme because of its relatability. Almost everyone had to do chores sometime and didn't want to go outside into the darkness or enter a creepy basement that's also very dark. Especially when the basement lights could only be turned on at the end of the stairs. So you had to sprint up the dark stairs when finished to escape the darkness. The game jam actually had a few themes to pick from. We weren't used to that, but we sure as heck weren't complaining. We decided to pick the theme, do not answer the knocking. Besides that, the jam had so-called diversifiers, of which we had to include a few. Now that we had our themes, we put the following concept together. The player is a child that is home alone. They have to complete chores in and around the house. However, intruders walk around the house and knock at the door. The player has to wait until they are gone to go outside and complete the chores. Our idea was also to make the chores progressively more disturbing. That was a general idea. You'll see later how that went. Now let's get to the realization. I was responsible for creating the monster. I lovingly called it Creature. I think I did a pretty bang-up job. Reagan constructed the map. We had a few hiccups while constructing the house. But after that, it went quite great. The next step was to implement the quests. First up was taking out the trash. I did that by marking certain trash bags as ones to be taken out and made a little placing area. Another quest was to pick up balls from all around the garden. An important thing to implement for those quests was to make stuff easy to pick up. At first I made it so that you could carry the balls, but later removed that. I created a nice marker node where items that the player carries are displayed. While I did that, Reagan was busy decorating. He actually did a decent job. Now, before adding more quests, we had to add a feature that helps the player keep track of their progress. I got inspired by Pacify, where you pick up notes with pieces of lore that help you find out what to do. So I gave the player some notes, a shivering hand, and a creepy font, and they were good to go. I couldn't stop myself from doing this one though. This was the first time I experimented with sub-viewports, and it was actually kind of fun. I will definitely work with them again in upcoming games. Now that this was done, and Reagan designed a few more quests, it was time to implement the remaining gameplay. I will not spoil you the remaining quests, but they sure were a lot of fun to implement. I'll give you a teaser of one of the early prototypes for something. Then we had to do the hard but cool part, the creature's pathfinding AI, and the darkness. We baked a navigation mesh for when the player was detected. While they weren't detected, the creature would follow a predetermined path, because it was easier to do than anything else. We also put a safe zone into the house, so that the player would be protected from the creature there. Now something important was to motivate the player to actually go inside sometime, because we didn't implement any important quests inside the house, and we wanted to implement the experience of getting back into the safe zone as fast as you can after completing your chore. So we created the darkness. When the player completes a quest, a dark sphere comes near to kill them if they don't enter the house. We later changed it from dark to red because that looked cooler and communicated immediate danger better because you could see the horizon getting smaller. We also changed the nodes during the darkness for an additional fear factor. But I haven't even mentioned the most important part.
Seit 16 Jahren. Ich mach's denn da bist.
The phone calls. Eventually we had to logically connect all the chores and explain the ever-refreshing list that the player had. So we added cutscenes in the beginning and the end of the game, and added phone calls between the chores. I volunteered to make the phone calls, but when it came to the voice lines I kinda got cold feet, so instead I borrowed voice lines of a German meme. This made the calls rather ridiculous for every German speaker playing the game, but I added a bit of distortion, hoped not too many German speakers would have their experiences ruined by hearing Marcel Davis, and left it as a little Easter egg. And I guess that was pretty much it. We still did a ton of polishing, of course, but in the end, we were quite satisfied with the result. Of course, there are probably still 1,000 bugs in it, but I'm not ashamed of that. Games that are bug-ridden are games that people play, and only if you report a bug can it be fixed. Thanks for watching, and have fun playing Chores of Horror.